Space, the final frontier. This is the mechanical mission of the Mazda CX-9, to take this space and let you stuff it full of all your delicate underthings and the occasional shrieking child, and take all these wonderful possessions to places far away, no matter what the weather, and do it in complete comfort and a reasonable degree of fuel efficiency. The question is, can I ever get this heads-up display to turn off? How do you feel about this hue? It is called, and let us look at the literature, it is called Soul Red Crystal Metallic. Wow. There's a whole lot of this paint on this car because this is a whole lot of car. This is Mazda's big SUV, the CX-9, as opposed to the 7 or the 5. Why are they all odd numbers? Man, I don't know. It seems odd, doesn't it? But there you go. But boy, it is a very, very elegantly shaped vehicle. Mazda's got so much going on as far as their various styling techniques, various disciplines that they introduce into their vehicles. And one of the most important because I know you people, you're very, very interested in functionality and the mechanics of it all, is the Skyactiv discipline, or the philosophy that the engineering department calls their pursuit of performance, economy, lightweight, handling, horse and rider as one, which is a different type of philosophy, but that ties into the whole Skyactiv thing. And this is probably their flagship SUV, and in this particular trim level, which is Signature, and incidentally it comes only with all-wheel drive, which I think is perfectly good, because a lot of the times the type of people that would need a vehicle like this in terms of its height, a little bit of ground clearance and everything else, are the kind of people that, let's say, lead the active lifestyle and like winter sports, or like getting to work when there's snow on the ground and that kind of thing, and maybe some light off-road work. That's what this car is designed for, and all-wheel drive suits it perfectly. And it also suits the drivetrain well, because you get a much better, when you start to get bigger in vehicles, front-wheel drive by itself has a few limitations and gets to be maybe not the best way to do things. Rear-wheel drive is a little better, but all-wheel drive is best of all. So before any more delay, let's go for one of the most important aspects of the Skyactiv engineering protocol. Let us look at the engine. All righty. Welcome. Now, this is an interesting thing here. This engine, the base engine, is a 2.5 liter inline 4-cylinder. Now, if Mazda is so obsessed with odd numbers, what in the world are we doing with an even numbered cylinder thing? I mean, there's 3s, they're inline 3s, there's inline 5s. I've driven them. But no, they're gonna stick with a 4-cylinder just to throw us all off. But this particular unit is turbocharged. Actually, it's called dynamic pressure turbocharging. And the horsepower numbers and the torque numbers are interesting because they are dramatically affected by what kind of gas you use. If, for example, you use the standard grade of fuel that we all use, 87 octane for the most part, you get 227 horsepower and 310 pounds of feet. Foot-pounds of torque, that is. But however, if you opt for the more expensive fuel, you get 250 horsepower and 320 pounds of feet. So it's kind of interesting that if you feel you need those 20 extra horses for whatever reason, you can pay for them. It's like having a subscription, you know. You have to just put the high octane super in the sucker, and supposedly the horsepower will go up. I don't know about all that. You know, I find that odd. I don't, but I'm an odd person, so maybe that means it makes perfect sense and I just don't realize it. But anyway, what we have is 4 cylinders, and our turbocharging unit. Oh God, I hate that camera shadow. Camera shadows are just, you know, that's what YouTube's all about. It's just one big camera shadow. Your turbocharger is back there, very close to the firewall. That's what is become pretty much the standard. It's unusual to see the turbocharger on these 4-cylinder engines in the front, but a few people do it that way. And I say, God bless them all, whatever floats your packaging problems. But this means that this air box right here, right here, this one, goes in there, comes around and feeds directly into the turbocharger, and I think part of it feeds into the, I always run into this problem. Where the heck does the actual fuel injection system, God, it's going to drive me mad, that camera shadow. Where do they get, now there's, right down here, if you can see this, which you probably can't, there appears to be an intake right down there that the air goes into the gasoline direct injected engine parts. So your intake's here, exhaust here, turbocharger there, cylinders here. Fuel does not go here. This was how you check your oil. Fuel does not go in here. That's where you put in your oil, which is 5W30, which is kind of an unusual flavor these days. 020 seems to be the norm, but 530, fine. They know what they're doing. But that's our engine compartment. Now, what in the world do we have in terms of transmission? Well, we have a Skyactiv, of course, 6-speed automatic transmission. And again, all-wheel drive is standard. So you got all that goodness to get you down the road no matter what the conditions. And plenty of muscle to do it, incidentally, especially if you like the premium fuel. La-di-da, de-la-di-da. Look at that, 36-inch wheels. I kid. 20-inch wheels on this Mazda CX-9. And that's becoming a real popular size. I don't know, man. I just look at a bigger wheel and I look at my lifestyle and where I drive. And I always look at those enormous wheels and I just wish there was just more tire between the wheel and the road. These aren't bad. I mean, some of these things like the Toyota TRD off-road packaging and stuff like that, it's also a 20-inch wheel on a truck that's designed to drive over rocks and things. So I don't know, but that's they're beautiful wheels. I don't know if they're Skyactiv. I'm assuming they are because this is the Skyactiv vehicle after all. And what else do we have that's beautiful besides this amazing paint job? I tell you, the manufacturers, that's one thing they're all doing brilliantly these days. The finish on these things is just extraordinary. Now then, what in the world happens if we do this right here? Oh, of course. The interior is revealed with our captain's chairs. And back here, we have our cargo area. Very, very high liftover, which is either good or bad, depending on what you're loading in and how. But if you're loading in a big box, this can be very convenient because it's nice and high off the ground. Wait, from there to there, that's way up there. And look at this. You got your front row chairs, I guess your navigator and your helmsman, and then you have your captain's chairs where they sit in, and then we have back here, we have steerage class. Well, there we are. For the third row passengers, which tend to be little people. So you could say that, boy, this is real close to the gate here. Wow, what happens when I shut the gate? Let's shut the gate and see. Let's have a look. Yep. It seems to fit fine. There's more room than you think. How about that? I find that very interessant. And you still actually have a bit of cargo room back here, even with the third row deployed. Now, something else that's real interesting here. Let's see if I can put this away. Here we go. Ka-cha. We have a very nicely finished cargo area, by the way. This is pretty decent carpet in here. It looks good. And then we have a little bit of storage underneath here for your long flat items. I see fishing rods going in here, although it'd have to be the breakdown rods because, you know, standard seafaring wouldn't fit very well. But there's room for a few items that are small in nature. And then underneath here, yeah, you got your base booster and your temporary spare tire at the ready. Excellent, excellent. We do like those temporary spare tires. And even the cubbies here. Now, what the hell's under here? Look at all that. Look at there. Well, I can see all kinds of stuff you could put in there. If you're going on your road trip, you could put a spare quart of oil in there just in case. Is there one over here too? Looks like it, looks like it. You got one. Oh, this one's a lot shallower. But you got a lot of storage. Yep, let's see if I can put this back in. Wait a minute, I'm working on it. There we are. So, nice, huh? Quite a bit of room, quite a bit of space. Not quite as big as, say, a 2.5-ton truck, but it's there's room. There's room for lots of things, including your loved ones. Provided, of course, in the third row, your loved ones aren't massive loved ones. I mean, if they're larger, there's more there to love, but you know. But you know, we still have this interesting, something that manufacturers have been very successful at these days, and I admire it, is giving a family resemblance to their cars. You can tell this is a Mazda, just because there's certain cues in the styling that's part of the modern Mazda. And that's a good thing, because family identity is always welcome in cars. And you know, like your Tuckers, they all kind of had a real interesting look, but immediately identified themselves as a Tucker. And Hyundai's got that down. Toyota/Lexus, both. A lot of that front end styling is familial in nature, and that you can identify them as part of that make. Same thing with pretty much everybody these days. GM trucks, they do it. But Mazda does it in a classy way. It's a very, very nice looking car, inside and out. And once again, as is common practice these days, we have a mix of analog instrumentation here and here, and then we have virtual computer generated, put on the screen just like you're looking at your iPad, this guy right here. Although it does mimic the appearance of an analog instrument. So what does this do for us? Well, first of all, you have a very useful trip computer in the middle of the speedometer that can be navigated if one navigates. I had it set on trip A. This is trip B. This is whether or not you're following using the adaptive cruise control. And this is telling you when your service is due. And this is your compass heading, northwest, roughly correct. And this is off, which makes it look all the more normal, almost nostalgic. And then we have back to the trip odometer A. So, in typical Mazda practice, it's a very, very legible situation for all of us. Look at all this. I keep getting all this. However, you know, I still kind of long for the full one way or the other. I think that's what's happening to me, is I like it either completely virtual or completely mechanical, analog. I don't know. I'm coming around. You know, I have no choice, but that's pretty much the system. Now, while we're talking about this, I have to address something that upsets me rather greatly. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to turn off. I want to show you something. All right, come over here into our main display here, and if I go to home, and if I go to settings, and then I go to in-vehicle displays, active driving display. Active driving display is what Mazda calls their heads-up system. So if we look at the active driving display content, the square is not checked, and that means it's turned off, right? Okay, I did that. So we're going to leave that as it is, and I'm going to restart the car. There we go. It is so quiet now. Oh look, it's telling us what we just didn't do. We didn't go anywhere. But anyway, and here we go. And that's interesting. It brings the radio back on, even though I didn't ask it to. That's fascinating. But we're booting up now, and I notice over here we have a heads-up display, if you can see it. So I don't want that heads-up display. So I'll go back over here, go to settings, and there it is. And then I go to, well, it's taking its time, isn't it? To the point where it's not doing anything. Jeez. Settings, in-vehicle displays, active driving display. But look, it's still checked as in turned off, basically. And yet, as I showed you, it is not turned off. It is on. So how do I turn it off? Well, I check it on, and then I check it off, and now it's gone. So, as I've always had this problem with Mazdas, they like to make you, they really want you to use that heads-up display bad. And in order to, the default position is always on. And that used to bother me, because every single time I got in the car and started, I would have to go through that menu and turn it off. Now, even if you already have it turned off, as indicated, you got to turn it back on and turn it off again. They're actually making it more difficult to turn the thing off. I find them silly doing this. It upsets me greatly, as you might be able to tell. It's a simple thing, but it's also something that's in my line of sight, and I don't like that. I don't like it at all. So while we're in this rough area here, we have most of the climate control systems, which you can see right here, on all the cars are pretty much standardized and very, very easy to use, especially if the system works well enough that you can just put it on automatic, adjust the temperature, and you can sync them up so they're the same on both sides, because although this is a vast cavern of a vehicle on the inside, usually if you had it set up the same, you're fine. But if you have the passenger side set to a lower or higher, I'm still dubious about how much difference that really makes. It only makes a difference if it's a radical difference between the two settings. So, you know, there you go. So now then we have a very conventional shifter. And as always, we have our drive setting there. And then we have our manual setting here. And we have our paddles right there, as is normal practice these days. And over here we have our selection of what mode we want to be in. Now when we do that, nothing happens. We do that, that's the sport mode, and that's not the sport mode. Sport mode, not sport mode. We also have way over here a button that I believe is your off-road thing. But it doesn't, other than the light, there we go, off to the, there we go. So if you are in an off-road situation, you could use a little bit more electronic bias towards that type of driving. There you go. What else do we have? Oh yes, the infamous command controller. You know it, if it's on a BMW, it's known as iDrive. Audi calls it their MMI, which is the multimedia, what's the I stand for? I don't know. I'd call it multimedia C controller, but anyway. But it's a knob that is used to navigate the central screen. Now the thing is, they call it their command controller, and I've mentioned this before, but this vehicle has captain's chairs, which means that the person in the driver's seat is the helmsman, and then over here you got your navigator, and then back here, for some reason, you got a brace of captains in your captain's chairs. So if this is the command controller, then obviously it's the captain that's supposed to be using it, not the helmsman. So, you know, so the captain has to reach all the way forward and twist it around and turn your map up and down and do all that kind of thing. I don't know, man. I don't know about this whole captain's thing. Warp speed, Mr. Sulu. I mean, it may be fun to be captain. It's fun for the captain to be captain, but for everybody else, it's a pain in the butt. But there you go. So what else do we have? Here is our charger. If you have a QI-equipped smartphone or dumb phone or Codaphone, I mean, you know, whatever you have, you can charge as you drive wirelessly, which is very, very nice feature that is becoming commonplace, but not on everything. So it's wonderful to have. With the adaptive cruise control, your controls for that are right here on the right thumb side. And on the left side, we have that information thing, and this is also a bit of magic for your audio system. You can raise and lower the volume, and you can also change your favorite channels. And the various indicators here, this is for the that will take you directly to your audio system, and of course home is where you navigate to every place else. This is your navigation, which looks like a little airplane. This is your back button, and this is your, you can select a screen that will have your favorite radio selections that you have. So we also have heated steering. Very, very nice. And where is our, there we go. Here is our heated seats. I don't see any ventilation, which is kind of surprising. This is the top of the mark CX-9, which is the signature edition, but it doesn't appear to have that, which is a little bit unusual. So anyway, that's what we're dealing with in the control department. And again, I don't understand this whole heads-up display obsession that Mazda has. I've actually contacted them literally like 3 years ago and asked them about it, and they just said, well, that's the way it is, you know, and that's okay. Now over here also, I should indicate to you, this is our lane departure off switch. It's the default position is on. I don't like it on, so I turn it off here. And this is our view, which has our backup camera, and this is the front. So you got front and back, in addition to the 360 to that right side there, which is extremely convenient. And look at this. This is your side, just your side, so you can squeeze in them parking lots in the mall. Then you won't be able to get out the door, but that's okay. So there we have it, folks. And all in all, this is, when we're almost talking minivan territory in terms of room, not quite, but almost. This is a very manageable interior, as far as it's not too crazy. I think just about any family member i.e. mom or dad in particular, can get pretty comfortable in this car quickly. If you like heads-up displays, you're in great shape because your active driving display is always going to be there for you. And that'll make you happy, and if you're happy, I'm happy. So, there we go. All right. How about out back behind the front seats? What do we got here? Ah, the aforementioned captain's chairs. Is it William Shatner? I don't know if it is. Is it Chris Pine? I don't know. But what we have here is some excellent Napa leather, which is extremely subtle and wonderful. And in our captain's chairs, you will discover this right here is your access to the third row. Shall we check out the third row right away? That's a very important thing for a lot of people. Okay, yes, we will. Here we go. All right then. This looks promising. Oh man. Now the seat is not all the way back, but it's back quite a bit. And the room here is very good, and it doesn't suffer from the excesses of having an overly high rear deck for the third row seat, so that you kind of got your knees up in your near your maxilla, your zygomatic arch. Well, anyway, it's not up in your skull, your knees. This is actually very comfortable. And look, this is the mark of a previous journalist. I'm much cleaner than that. I don't know who that was. There must have been some hayseed somewhere. But I like this rear seat. This is actually one of the better, especially when you consider this is not massively huge on the outside. This is very acceptable for two adults. And for kids, I think kids could get downright rambunctions back in this area. Now, if I want to move forward again, look at there. Look at that right there. Look. It's not exactly difficult to get in and out. And then we slide her back. And speaking of which, this here allows you, wait a minute. One thing at a time. God, I'm getting so ahead of myself here. There we go. You can slide it back and forth, fore and aft, and hee-hoo. You get that? You understand that? You can recline easily. And now, since I've just promoted myself from engineer's assistant to captain, just like that, this is nice. Click. We just locked into position. And look at this massive console we have, which includes heated seats. Very nice. And then we have a console that I would say is pretty much as generous as the front seat console that these poor plebes up here have to deal with. So the headroom is very good. We have shades. Look at there. Look at that wonderful shadiness. That's outstanding. Outstanding. Very well done, Mazda. Very well done. As usual throughout the cabin, it's very, very well assembled. It seems like there's a lot of care that went into this particular unit, which I believe was built in Japan, as far as I know. I'll double check that for you. But note the pleating here, this extraordinary pleating that they have in this excellent seating. So with the Signature, you get some, gosh, I don't know what right off the bat what the price difference is, but you sure get some nice appointments in terms of, and you can't underestimate, if you're going to use your car a lot, you can't underestimate the value of really comfortable seats. I just feel like I'll just take a nap. No, it's really great. The drive shaft tunnel is what I would call moderate. Not bad, not huge, but you really don't have any places for somebody to sit in the middle anyway, so that's not as critical. And what's something that's funny to me, when you go to the higher grades of all these vehicles, the bench seat, you can get this vehicle with a bench seat, but it's at a lower trim grade. So if you want to get the top of the mark and you want a bench seat in the back, I don't think that can be done unless you know somebody at Mazda. And that's a shame, I think, because a lot of people buy this vehicle to haul their families around, and they have more than 2 kids. So that you got your spousal units here, A and B, and then you have Tommy and little Becky and Strangely Brown, the third kid, and but you're going to have to put him in the back, all the way back there. He won't mind it though. It's kind of, and you're a hell of a long way from the parents, which is what you live for when you're that age. So I don't know. I mean, it's a 7-passenger configuration, they say, which I would describe realistically as a 6-passenger configuration, although if there's any third row seat that probably has enough room to put 3 people back there, that would be that one right there. That's quite good. And while we're at it, let's have a little more fun here. We're having such a good time together. We'll go back here and we'll open this up, and in order to put the seats down, you pull this and you push that, boom. Pull this, push that. How about that? I like this space. Space is the final frontier. Da, 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 da. Da, da. We go for a drive, yes? You know, before I continue, I need to issue a video errata. Earlier I said that we have our heated seats here, but I said, but where is the ventilation? Well, what of the ventilation? Why doesn't it have ventilation? Well, it does. It was right down here. It was just on the lower level below the actual display for the HVAC, heating, ventilation, air conditioning system. So it does have ventilation. Matter of fact, I'm going to turn it on now. Oh, very nice. You'd think I was a captain instead of a mere helmsman. Captain's chairs. How is the captain's chair, by the way? You're in it. Well, sort of. Well, anyway, the performance of our 2.5 liter turbocharged, the first of its name, actually it was the first of this particular engine was first used in this vehicle when it was introduced, I think a couple of years ago, a year or two ago, the 2.5 liter. And it feels like, whereas many turbocharged 4-cylinder engines feel like you just have a V6 under the hood, this feels to me more like a 4-cylinder turbocharged engine. Why is that? I don't have a real good explanation for that, to be honest with you. It's just a sense of how the engine feels under welly when you give it the beans, as YouTube's greatest automotive analyst, Sarah, would say. And the thing about it is it's a perfectly adequate power plant. It does fine, but it just doesn't seem quite as refined as some of the other ones do. But I'm really splitting hairs about this. because overall it's good. I mean, it does a very decent job, and we'll be anxiously awaiting the results of our fuel consumption examination, because that's the whole point of having a turbocharged 4-cylinder instead of a V6, is fuel economy. Some people will say emissions too, and that's a confusing one to me, because I don't really know how different the gasoline engine emissions are on a, say, a 3.5 liter twin turbo engine compared to like a small V8. I don't know if the actual emissions are that different, other than what you get from just burning less fuel. Does that make sense? I hope so. It also has some wonderful, typically Mazda qualities. The handling is good, although this thing does, when you really push it in like a downhill S-turn, you can really feel the top heaviness of it. And it's not the whole level. When I mention something being top heavy these days, it's a whole different level of top heaviness in the more positive direction. In other words, in general, these cars, even though everybody's driving SUVs now, the SUVs don't feel near as top heavy as they used to. And there's all kinds of reasons for that. There's so much, and Mazda's very, very big in this with the Sky Active program, is they use a lot of high-strength, lightweight metals all over the car, in the frame below. It's a unibody. I say frame, but it's that structure underneath the car that the subframe's attached to with the suspension components. But in addition, all over this car they use all kinds of high-strength steel, and the benefit to high-strength steel is you can get away with a lot less weight, but have a similar strength to it, so that it allows you to basically help to improve the mileage, while without reducing the integrity of the body, and especially when it comes to crash testing. They still do really, really well in crash testing. They get better all the time. Actually, with each subsequent generation, most cars do a lot better in crash testing. This car feels very solid. Especially very important when you're. It's the kind of vehicle that you would probably carry your youngins in, and their friends that also go to you know, play t-ball and stuff like that. Of course, do not put the children in the captain's chairs. You don't want them to get a big head when they're really little, because that's just going to lead to strife later in life, or politics. One of those two things. Is it quiet? Yes. The CX-9 is a very quiet vehicle. I like it. I like the driving dynamic. I haven't driven a Mazda in years that I didn't really enjoy driving and feel like it's a nice solid package. Now the ride quality, there's better out there. Yeah. Handling, yeah, there's better out there in this class, but it's not bad. And when you take the vehicle as a whole, plus the thing, Mazda's got a lot going for it right now. In addition to just designing some very nice cars, they seem to be doing pretty damn good in the reliability department. Mazda does a great job of keeping road noise down, at least on the CX-9 it does, because I don't hear near as much as I normally hear. Well, I got I was mowing the lawn, do I have my hearing protectors on? Well, I guess, oh no I don't, good. That validates what I'm saying somewhat. See, there is a bit of body lean here. Last time I came through here in a spirited manner was on the Volkswagen Golf R, which I believe I used the term clings like a limpet, something like that. That is a really good handling car. This thing, you know, it's no sports car. And if you have your children in the back, you're not going to be driving like an idiot like me anyway. You're going to be driving at a nice sedate pace. But overall, I mean, it's perfectly acceptable. It's not like it's a problem or it's not getting the job done. It's actually very, very, it's a very comfortable car to drive too. Now the suspension is, I find curious because the more I drive it, I usually get used to the suspension of whatever I'm driving, and I start to notice all the bumps less, no matter what I'm driving. I think I just kind of acclimate to it. But this one I'm having the opposite effect on. The more I drive it, the more I think the ride is not the greatest thing in the world for something like this. And it's like middle of the road. If I had that scale with a thing in the middle of it, like so, it would be right in the middle, both in handling and ride quality. Because it's good, it's perfectly good, but it's not great. And on the other hand, when it would come to quietness, it'd be all the way over here in the excellent category. Because it's a nice, quiet vehicle. And I also get the feeling that Mazda, being the engineering company they are, you're in a really safe vehicle when you're in one of these things. I mentioned this before, but and I don't have not the crash test results. The thing that I think matters more than crash test results is if you look at the insurance claims that are generated by how many injury claims they get when a car is in an accident. They have numbers on everything that they insure, and a lot of them are such that they do real well in crash tests, but in the real world, people get hurt in them a lot. Now, I don't know what that means, other than the crash tests are the crash tests, and the real world is the real world. And there's certain people, I've gotten in arguments about people that talk about, well, I don't need a truck, but I like to drive around in a truck because it's so much safer than a car. And my response is always, well, that depends on what kind of accident you're planning on having. Because in some cases, you're absolutely right when you have a bigger vehicle. And in other cases, they're much more prone to roll over. But my big thing is this: which is the best accident avoidance vehicle? And when you get into bigger vehicles, you get into longer stopping distances. You get more inertia. There's all kinds of things that, there's plus and minuses to everything. And I looked at this years ago, and I haven't in a long time, but I was actually comparing injury rates, which I was talking about before, with things like trucks, SUVs, and passenger cars. And again, that it was really broken down in an interesting way because it depends on what kind of accident happens. For example, if a passenger car crashes into a big truck or a big SUV, it usually comes out on the worst side of the stick. But by the way, I would point out, not always, because I know of a particular case with a hybrid with a couple of very elderly people in it, had a head-on collision with a very large full-size pickup, and they were hurt bad, and they were already in their 80s, but they both survived, and the person driving the very large full-size pickup did not. So accident avoidance is a #1 criterion in my view. But see, as we go down this thing, and I'm coming around here, there's a little bit of rock and roll to it. It's not bad. It's just, you are immediately, if you're under the impression you might be like driving a Mazda CX sedan, and it turns out you're not, you will be amazed to learn that you're actually driving an SUV that has a much bigger roof line, taller roof line, and it will respond as though it has to respond to physics like everything else does. See, it sounds good, doesn't it? I like the transmission because the transmission seems to hold the gears very, very nicely when you do put some acceleration on it. These cruise controls over here, I find to be a bit boy, it really slams on the brakes when it sees a car in front of it, doesn't it? That's another thing that's fascinating to me about all kinds of adaptive cruise controls and other things, about how they respond when they finally see a car in front of you that's moving appreciably slower than you are. Some of them see it sooner and slow down faster, and then you're fine. And it's much more of what I would describe as more of almost like a human being's actually driving the car. Not quite, but close. And then there's the other guys that they respond in such a way that it's like you were down messing with some of the touch screen controls or something like that, and you look up all of a sudden and there's that car and you just wah! And it seems like for some reason the adaptive cruise controls do that. You know what could be happening there? You know, they got these cameras and things that are, and LiDAR and stuff that is actually watching the road, and maybe they, being computers, are going and talking to some other computer about something like Bitcoin, something like that. And then all of a sudden they get back to doing their job, and they stop that way. Maybe that's what happened. I'd put Mazda as a whole, as a company, as a family of vehicles, pretty much mid-pack. Not bad, not superlative, somewhere in the middle. You know what's really scary to me is and something I don't understand. I've had a few cars that I've done a lot of little tests in regard to this, and one of the most one of the most common things that happens is you're driving along this particular highway, which goes a long way, and someone will slow and then turn off to the right to go to one of these houses, businesses, anything like that. And you know how human beings are. Sometimes they give you plenty of warning, and other times I need to stop. I need to get some donuts. And they nail the brakes and fly over there. Well, how the car responds is always very interesting. And I've had a couple that have done a really admirable job at seeing this happen very quickly and then gradually but strongly putting the brakes on. And I'm real impressed. I'm going, man, that's fantastic. And then I'll do it again, very similar scenario, and they'll like freak out. They'll like, ah, at the last second. So, who knows? All I know is this Mazda has a very decent adaptive cruise control system. If only I could get them. Another thing about, I didn't mention this earlier, I should have, the radio. Here's your volume knob, and there's a volume thummy rocker switch over here. So this is how you adjust the volume. You also push this up and down to turn it on and off, but there's no other knobs. And I like having a tuning knob. It's from decades of having tuning knobs, but I feel like it's much harder to instantly change a channel up or down quickly if you have a tuning knob. It's just easy, and you can do it without ever taking your eyes off the highway. On these things where it's all touchscreen, you can't. You have to look down there, and yet, you know, here we have this company that is so dedicated to the concept of the heads-up display that they practically force you to use it. That's right, Mazda. I said practically force you. A lot of people won't go to the trouble every time. Maybe you're hoping for this, to go through the little protocols you have to switch the thing off if you don't like it. I find them, personally, I just find them really distracting and pointless. Because I can look down, I just looked down and I was going 53 miles per hour. Okay, all right, I lied, 45. But having that little bug down here, I just don't get it. And if you look at it, you change your focus from what's around on the road to that, and it's the same thing. You might be able to see a car come out of a driveway or something like that and pick it up, but as long as your eyes are focused on that, it throws everything else. It's like a camera. It throws everything in the background out of focus. And what does that mean? Well, for all intents and purposes, you took your eyes off the road, even though you're using your heads-up display. And so that's me, right? That's just me. That's how I feel about it. I don't like them. I don't use them. But I shouldn't have to fight to turn the thing off every time I start the car. Will anything ever come of this? Probably not. Would you listen to me? Yeah, I would listen to me. Indeed, down with the HUD. Well, as we depart this particular review, I want you to remember that the CX-9 is nearly twice as much CX as the CX-5, just so you know. Be careful out there, everybody. Thank you for watching.